Welcome to the Motivate Podcast with Clint Armitage. We are trying to provide Christian motivation one show at a time, and the next one starts right now. All right. Hey, it's Clint Armitage. That kind of sounded like Fat Albert, huh? From back in the days. If you're old enough to remember Fat Albert. Hey. Anyways, my name is Clint Armitage. Thank you for coming back and joining me for the Message Motivate podcast. And that's what you're here to kind of take part in today. The Message Motivate podcast is trying to motivate people one person at a time, one show at a time. And so thanks for coming back and being a part of this. And so now the title of this podcast is called How to Find a Real Adventure. Now, when we say the word adventure, what comes to mind? We start thinking of skydiving. We start thinking of mountain climbing. We start thinking all these crazy type of, physical adventures when we say the word adventure. Hey, you want to go on an adventure? Oh, safari. You think of a safari. You think of things that are just not typically part of the normal everyday life that most of us live. And we start thinking extremes, right? And an adventure doesn't have to be that way, right? It could be something, less dangerous. It could be something like a hike. It could be something that's, that just kind of makes you uncomfortable, right? And so moving past what a physical adventure is, that extreme adventure, can we find a real adventure in life without that type of context? And yeah, I think we can probably have the most adventurous life if we're doing things that we're called to do. Because actually, if we are answering our calling and the things that we need to do, not only for God, but for ourselves, in God's plan for our life, then we are going to definitely have an adventure. And that adventure can actually be daily. And because remember, adventure really puts us out of our comfort zone. And if you're living a godly life, God is going to have you do some things. He's going to point you in directions. He's going to have you meet some people, do some things that are going to be uncomfortable. That's just part of sanctification. That's a part of growing. That's a part of trying to be more like Christ. Because if you think about it, Christ had the ultimate adventure. Remember, he said in the Bible, he has nowhere to lay his head. He's a king that was born in a manger, right? The exact opposite of what you believe a king should be born into and a life that the king should have. Literally, the king of the universe. And he is put in this very uncomfortable position growing up, not the way a king should grow up. But again, he was living the ultimate adventure, and he knew his mission, and his mission was literally on earth to die, to sacrifice himself for all of us, for love. That is an ultimate uncomfortable position, knowing that's what you're here to do. Man, you got to understand that Jesus' adventure is the ultimate adventure. And he did it for us, obviously, right? So living a Christian life, is going to put us into positions that are going to be uncomfortable and going to give us this opportunity to live an adventurous life. Because if we do follow God, and if you have for any amount of time, he has put you in some very uncomfortable positions. But as we look back at that, it made us better people. And it was an adventure. But man, it was scary. So, for instance, like for me, right now, I believe God is pivoting me. And he's calling me to take a risk, to trust him and take a risk with my career and finances in terms of pivoting the way or what I'm doing in the direction I'm doing in my career and things like that. So like, for instance, this podcast, this is something that is not comfortable to me because this is not what I have done for the majority of my life in a career mode type of thing, even in a hobby type of sense. Really, if you've listened to some of my other podcasts, my background is in law enforcement. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, and my business that I've been running for, over 10 years now is a high performance, high stress law enforcement training company. And, we do a lot of firearms and tactics. That is the foundation of the business. And so pivoting to something totally different, right? Going from the range and shooting and tactics and all these high speed things, and now pivoting to something that's, online, it's audio, it's, trying to do some things that are not normal to me. There is a nexus though, because I still talk about high performance and how to do things better, like this adventure podcast, right? But really, it is testing me. It is putting me out of my comfort zone, and it is pushing me to my limits in certain aspects. And so, but that's what I believe God is calling me to do. So I'm trying to follow it, but it is uncomfortable. And this is part of my adventure. So what is God calling you? And what's your adventure? Because if you have been a Christian for any amount of time, you have been, tested. You have been pushed to limits. You have had adventure in front of you. And God may be calling, you may be in one right now, or he's calling you to one right now, to an adventure. And so, like I said, with my situation, God is calling me to trust him and risk my career, my finances on this adventure. But it is trusting him at the same time, right? So it's okay, but still scary. All right. So let's look at a verse that could make you uncomfortable here. I'm going to go to Matthew 19, specifically Matthew 19:21, but we're gonna look at a little bit more than that. Okay, so this is in this chapter in Matthew 19. Jesus is kind of talking to these crowds, to these people, and then the Pharisees come to him, and they're trying to test him. They're trying to ask him questions, to trip him up and all that. And he's talking about divorce. They're talking about divorce, and things like that. Well, and so Jesus answered them. And then later on, starting in verse 16, a rich man comes up to him and asks him, "Teacher, what good thing must I do to get eternal life?" This guy's a rich man. And this is what Jesus says. "Why do you ask me about what is good?" Jesus replied, "There is only one who is good. If you want to enter life, keep his commandments." Okay, so this is what the rich guy says back. He says, "Which one?" Jesus replied, "You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal." He's talking about the commandments, right? "You shall not give false testimony, honor your father and mother, love your neighbor as yourself," that kind of thing. Well, this guy comes back again and he says, "Hey, all of these I have kept. What do I still lack?" Okay, and God knows, right? So this is where his adventure comes in, the potential of going on a spiritual adventure, something that's going to really push him to his limits. Jesus answered, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven. Then come follow me." When the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Truly I tell you, it's hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven." That was his adventure, and he missed it. See, God makes us uncomfortable because he's putting us in a place that we're not used to. He's asking us to do things that we're not used to, but it's something that he knows will help us in the end. So follow your adventure, follow your calling, and do things that's going to push you out of your comfort zone. God is going to let you know that. All right. Thanks for joining me on the Message Motivate podcast. I'm Clint Armitage. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Motivate Podcast with Clint Armitage. If you want to get in touch, email us at info@clintarmitage.com.